The Bronx in the 70s, run down, burn down, fun, dangerous, survival, hungry. I witnessed all these things. I saw writers, MCs, DJs, and people getting down in a circle. I was blown away. I felt like I came alive that day. I created what's called the whip backspin, where you could whip your legs around and then ball up and then spin faster and spin more. A complete accident. You can't become great at anything unless you have competition. I kind of became this mercenary b-boy. You battle them, you take them on, and you become bigger. There's something about your dance that is going to cause people to think only of you, because that's your style.
Are you ever gonna stop dancing?
How do you quit culture?
This week on the show, we welcome a gentleman from the Bronx, New York City, Crazy Legs from the Rocksteady crew. He is the original b-boy, or break boy as it was known back in the 70s. He's the one that originated so many of the moves that you see on the floor. And on this show, he talks about how he created the backspin. And he said he was in the hallway and he almost fell and he had to pull his legs in and he did something like that. And this is the guy that created so many of the moves that I train in every day. He is a legend of the sport. He's in his 50s and he's still competing, and it was a huge honor to sit down with Crazy Legs and find out how he created a move called the windmill that I've spent the last year trying to perfect, and how he's been there and done that. He was on David Letterman in 1983 doing breakdancing and talking about the movement, and he's a guy who can always remind us where the roots are in breakdancing. And it was a huge honor just to have Crazy Legs in the studio, so I know you're going to enjoy this episode. And you're also going to enjoy everything over on LondonReal.tv. We've got an academy full of crazy programs like the Life Accelerator, the Business Accelerator, and of course our brand new Broadcast Yourself that shows you how to create your own podcast or video talk show just like we did with London Real. So I'll see you over there, and now I leave you with Mr. Crazy Legs. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Richard Colon, aka Crazy Legs, the American b-boy from the Bronx, New York City, who was featured and credited in some of the earliest stories on hip-hop dancing in the mainstream press. In 1983, as president of the Rocksteady crew, you brought your dance over to here in London and Paris.
82.
82.
Yes.
And you also appeared in the movies Flashdance, Beat Street, and Wild Style, and the documentaries Style Wars and The Freshest Kids. Today, you're involved in community outreach, dance theater productions, traveling the world for Red Bull, B-Boy Champs, and promoting your home country of Puerto Rico. You're here in London to MC the UK B-Boy Championships happening this Sunday at the Forum in Kentish Town. Crazy Legs, welcome to London Real.
Thank you very much.
It's great having you.
Thank you. That was a nice intro. It was pretty good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's probably one of the better ones.
Yeah, that you've had. You've been coming here forever, right? I mean,
Yeah.
'83, you came here and toured. Why did you want to come to London so early?
Well, that wasn't even something that I set up. It just worked out that way. We were brought out here by a woman named Kool Lady Blue, and she had this series of events in New York, which started at a place called The Grill. Then it went to Danceteria. These are all nightclubs, and then eventually the Roxy, and that gained so much success, especially after the Studio 54 era, when that was on the downhill. The Roxy became the hot spot. Places like the Roxy, the Garage, and being that the Roxy was featuring this happening, this thing that was happening up in the Bronx and Manhattan, which was like breaking, graffiti, DJ and MCing, all these things. She dealt with Europe One, and I'm not sure who out here, but they put together this tour, and it was the first time, and this is before it was really called hip hop. It was the first time there was a hip hop tour ever done where it featured all the elements in the manner that she did it. There was something that was done by Henry Chalfant prior to that, but not as intense.
Okay. And Bambaataa toured with you as well?
Yeah, it was Africa Bambaataa, it was Futura 2000, Don D. White, Rocksteady Crew, the Double Dutch Girls, McDonald's Double Dutch Girls, aka the Fantastic Four. I'm not sure who else, I can't remember.
Do you remember what you thought of London and Paris when you came over here, and did it change you to see Europe as opposed to, the Bronx?
We really had no appreciation for anything like that. I think we thought the British accent was funny.
It is funny.
Like any ghetto kid at the time, we kind of had an ignorant perspective of the world. We were more concerned with take us to the hood, or where can we get some blackberry brandy and some beer and stuff like that. And when we performed, it was more about asking each other how we did on stage, as opposed to being concerned with, did the audience like it? And I think the audience liked that. Maybe they didn't understand what we were thinking, but whatever they saw, they liked. And it's weird that we really didn't care what they thought anyway.
Maybe that was part of the B-boy culture, of doing your thing, not their thing.
Yeah, or ignorance.
Right.
It's not like we were groomed for stage. And when you're not groomed for stage, you don't really know how to work it in a manner that is really catering to the audience. So I guess there was a certain rawness that worked.
Mm. I watched a clip last night on YouTube from 1983 of you on David Letterman. And you're there, and you're performing, and you're talking with him. And I was just like, whoa, this is almost 35 years ago.
Yeah.
And I guess that was around 83 when it was just blowing up. Flashdance. Oh yeah, that just come out. Mm-hmm. Can you describe what that year was like for you? With just all that exposure, movies, Letterman. I mean, you seemed like you were keeping it together.
We were living double lifestyles back then. Double lives for all of us. We were still doing wild things in the streets while these movies were coming out. And but at the same time realizing what fame was. In '83, I was in Hawaii, and it was shortly after we did the David Letterman show, which I thought he was a smart ass anyway.
He was back then, even more so, right?
Yeah, I didn't really care for him. But I was in Hawaii, in Waikiki, and I'm just sitting down on these rocks looking over the ocean, and then there's this preppy guy with his typical light blue shirt with his cream-colored shorts, and a white guy, and he is sitting next to me. He said, "Hey, weren't you on David Letterman?" And I'm thinking, wow, I'm like, about 5,000 miles away from home. I'm on this small island, and this person just came up to me and recognized me from television. That was the first time, outside of ghetto celebrity status, that I realized that I was getting some fame. So that was, I think that was the first time I was, I guess, made to think that there was something bigger happening.
In retrospect, how did you guys deal with that fame from the 80s?
We had no appreciation for it, man. We were just trying to get girls and party, and we would do, again, since we weren't groomed for that, we weren't chasing that, we didn't know how to appreciate it, and we would show off. Yeah, we came to London, went to Paris and went shopping and came back home with clothing that was fresh and things that other kids didn't have, and other people looking at us like, oh, wow, where'd you get that? And they, they can't get it. That's when shopping in another country was really different back then. You couldn't just get something in the way you can right now. So things like that were cool, but we really had no appreciation. We never really stopped to look. We never really took in culture. We never really took in the arts. We never really opened ourselves up to the bridge that was being built at the time in terms of bringing people together and understanding the differences, the nuances between cultures. And I think had we done that, we would have been able to sustain ourselves better before we had a downfall within the industry and kind of like shut down for a little while. But I don't know, but it's still something that served as inspiration for others, because there were other people who were probably looking at us saying, wow, these guys came out of the Bronx, I can do that too. Or Turkish people in Europe looking at us like, are they Turkish? They didn't know we were Puerto Rican, so some of them thought we were Turkish or Arabic, whatever, and they were inspired because we were coming from the same kind of social, economic background as them. So it was kind of empowering to them to see us. We had no idea that it was affecting people in that way. And these are things that I'm learning now.
Right, yeah. Look, I want to talk about kind of the pop in the 80s with b-boying and then disco coming, and I want to get your thoughts on b-boy culture today. But before we get there, I was wondering if you could tell us, Katona Avenue, 1977, when you first got down on the floor for the first time, and how that happened, and even what was it like being in the Bronx back then? Like what, you're talking about what you were like as a kid, but if you had to describe it to me and people listening, like what was it like?
Bronx in the 70s, run down, burn down, fun, dangerous, survival, hungry, needing clothes.
You said fun.
Yeah, with all
so
that.
All those things, it's still fun.
And still having a great time. Parties, house parties, grown-ups having jam sessions. That's when the grown-ups of that era grew up in a system that still had music programs. So that was like the last real generation of musicians who learned in school, and it was very typical. Mm-hmm. So there were moments like that. I'd be out in the street all day, running around and playing all these street games that we had back then, but then come home on the weekend or on a Saturday night, and my family's there having a jam session with an upright bass and timbales and congas and organ and doing 5-part harmonies and singing like Latin jazz or doo-wop and things like that, and it was really cool. But then there was also this dysfunctionality of the home within that, whether you're in a single-parent home, being raised by 6 kids, or watching, domestic violence being around you, alcoholism, drugs, a lot of those things that existed. And then from time to time being evicted and then not having anywhere to live, trying to find a place to stay. I remember things like that. And then with all that happening, and then you have the opportunity to be exposed to the Jam. And my cousin Lenny Len brought me to Crotona Avenue in the Bronx by 180th Street to a park jam. And he had been telling me all along, you gotta come to the Jam. People are rocking, people are breaking. And there was no such word as break dancing or hip hop. But so he would tell me all these things, and he brought me there. And I was a really shy kid. And I witnessed all these things. I saw writers, MCs, DJs, and people getting down in a circle. I was blown away. And I was there with like the corniest outfit you could possibly have.
What would that have been?
Embarrassing. That's what it would have been. Oh man, and everything. I don't know. You know, I wish I had a picture of that day, but you know, we were poor, so it wasn't anything new. It wasn't anything cool. But that day I saw the dance within this environment. I was blown away. I know I even got down on the floor to dance that day. I don't know if I got down on the floor or I jumped in a circle. Whatever it was, I jumped in a circle. Whatever I did was not good because I had no skill anyway, but I felt like I came alive that day. It was something that I really wanted to do, and my cousin started teaching me, and then 6 months later, I got so good at it, I started teaching him. So it was something that became very natural for me. It was something that opened me up, and it was the beginning of, I guess, establishing my lane.
Okay. Now, going out writing, what does that mean? It's some pastimes for the Bronx.
Bombing and writing. Bombing just means getting up, tagging up your name on every and anything, and if you're tagged up near your home, you probably had another, several alias names that only your boys knew, so that you don't get in trouble from your mother. Especially, I would do things like write it. I don't even know if she knew it was me, but I would write in my own building that we lived in, tag up Whiz Kid, and since it was graffiti, it wasn't my regular handwriting, so I would try to do things like that. And but it's fame. It's like Mr. Wiggles would say, graffiti is your lights on Broadway for someone from the hood.
Okay. So it's you up in lights. It's everyone recognizing you and your work.
And hopefully you wearing a toy, because there are some bad shows that go on Broadway and then they get shut down.
So hopefully your stuff is good. Yeah. Your writing's good.
Yeah. So I was what you would call a motion bomber, a motion tagger. I would go on the trains while they were working, and I'd just be bombing the system and bomb your line, write your name, and just keep getting up. Okay. It's all about fame, but fame to your own people, not people outside. They didn't really matter.
Okay. Now, fast forward 6 years, as 83, you're on Letterman and all that stuff, but what happened from 77 to 83?
Wow. By the time 1979 came around, I was already getting much better. I had evolved the backspin from spinning maybe 2 times, 3 times around, and if you're small enough, you spun more, but I added a whipping motion with my leg, and because of the plant, I added the plant that you would do in the chair freeze and a way to whip around. And it created what's called the whip backspin, where you could whip your legs around and then ball up and then spin faster and spin more. And that was the beginning of power.
And you just came up with that when you were practicing one day?
Accident, complete accident. I was actually, I over-rotated when I was going into a chair freeze, and it was on Crotona Avenue. And when I was practicing in this small hallway, and I went into that move, when I over-rotated, I didn't want my feet to hit the sides of the walls. So I balled up immediately. Didn't realize what I was doing, because it was more defensive and trying to protect myself, and my cousin was like, oh shit, do that again. I was like, oh, do what? And he helped me to realize that I was onto something. And then that eventually evolved into what people call the windmill, but originally called the continuous backspin.
Right. And you're practicing in a hallway?
A hallway, yeah, a tenement building.
Okay. Would you put cardboard down, or was
No,
it,
no. Cardboard didn't
that came
start
later?
until like we started hanging out in Manhattan, and we would hang out in what is now known as Rocksteady Park, and we would hang out in the back of the park where there were swings, and the rubber mats were under the swings for protection in case you fell off. But right next door to Rocksteady Park was also an appliance store, and we would take those boxes that were thrown out on the side of the building and put them in the back of the park under the swings, because number one, in the summer that black mat would get really hot, and it would kind of, I guess, break up into little pieces because of the wear and tear, and you get that on your clothes and you get dirty. So we would start putting that there just for practicing. But when it came down to us breaking and battling, we didn't walk around with cardboard. It's just like concrete, wherever. If you had a building, a wood floor, tiles, cement, it didn't matter. We didn't walk around with anything like that. That's just a whole misconception about, you know, how we got down.
You just get down on the concrete, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, eventually people did start using cardboard, but we weren't about that. We were more the raw B-boys who were just like, let's go right here, right now.
Okay. It's crazy because the last 12 months, I've been trying to get the windmill, right? And I've been banging my head, trying to get it, getting so frustrated. And finally, like, I kind of got it, and now I'm trying to perfect it. But the reason I'm doing that is because of something you did in a hallway in Katona Avenue.
By accident.
By accident, almost 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And now, me over here in London, I'm trying to copy that meme and that move. Does that ever blow your mind when you think about that?
Yeah, it does. There was a point when I started dancing or being a lot more active again in the 90s or late 80s. My friend Jerry Fontanez, AKA Fast Feet, he was a light heavyweight champ in kickboxing, and he was also a hip hop enthusiast, grew up in the Bronx. He was like, yo, Legs, Rocksteady for the 90s. I was like, oh, no. I don't know. So anyway, he convinced me to do it. But as that started happening and I realized there were some other people out there who were still breaking and they wanted to battle, but they were doing my moves. I'm like, yo, but why do I want to battle these guys? It's like, they're doing my moves. What's going on? They want to battle me with my moves. And he told me, yo, Legs, you have to understand, you created something that went around the world. You did something that people want to emulate around the world. You need to take pride in that. And it was the first time that I looked at it like, wow, okay, yeah. I really had an effect on the world where people want to do this move. So I learned to appreciate that.
Different perspective.
Yeah,
because when you and Ken were on Letterman, I think either Ken Swift or you both said, yeah, people are stealing our moves. So I guess in the beginning, you're like, wait a second, that's mine.
But well, the thing is with stealing moves, it was legal back then, but since there were so few moves, it was very obvious that someone was stealing your move. So what you wanted to do is steal a move and then recreate it so that people can look at it and say, oh yeah, that's the Jimmy D swipes, or you know, that's just the Crazy Legs backspin. You know, there was something significant about it that identified you with the person, as opposed to kind of like blatantly just doing something. But then you have to realize that if it's done widely enough, it just becomes part of the vocabulary of the foundation, and then you just have to submit and take pride that you contributed to the foundation of the dance. Yeah.
All right. So that's 79. What's 80, 81 like? Is it getting bigger?
80, I start hanging out in more of the downtown scene. I'm already battling people, trying to find more B-boys to battle, because coming out of 79 when most of the B-boys were stopping, I was getting better and didn't have much competition out there. So I would battle someone, and that, you know, if I beat that person, they would say, yo, I have this other person you should battle. And they probably want me to battle that person because they lost to that person, and because they saw my ability coming from the Bronx to be more than the average person in Manhattan. I kind of became this mercenary B-boy. where I would just continue to battle people. Then it just kind of like became like the Borg, where it's like you battle them, you take them on, and you become bigger, and sometimes that would lead to, and this is before I had a chapter of Rocksteady. I was in Rocksteady, but I didn't have any chapter, and I would see people who would come to be down with me, then start to form their own crews, and someone would come up to me and say, "Hey, but that's messed up. Why are they doing that?" And I would tell them, and it's weird because at a young age I was already thinking, it's all right. Like, if they go start another crew, that's more competition for us. Let it happen. Leave it alone. It's all right. Mm-hmm. Disappointing, yes, because your childhood friends, your boys, whatever, people you think that are loyal to you are running off and wanting to do their own thing. Sometimes for good reason, because maybe they weren't going to get enough fame with the size group that I had, and so that was good because I think you can't become great at anything unless you have competition. What do you really gauge yourself by if there's no one to compete against? So you have to think of like New York City Breakers, Dynamic Rockers, another crew called Scrambling Feet from Queens, I believe they were. If we didn't have those crews to battle, Rocksteady wouldn't have been seen as who we ended up being, or as what we ended up being regarded as in terms of like one of the all-time great crews.
And now you say downtown, so now downtown Manhattan and that kind of artists and stuff like that.
Well, not even that far downtown. When I say, see, coming from the Bronx, when you say downtown, you're still talking about the Upper West Side.
Okay, right.
Spanish Harlem, things like that. That's downtown for us in the Bronx. And then, down there is like all the way downtown, But that led to me meeting Take One, who lived in Washington Heights. David Martinez is his real name. Just passed away a couple of years ago. But Take One introduced me to Henry Chalfant because he had demonstrated his dancing, and Henry Chalfant was interested in it. He had heard about it already because Martha Cooper had documented some kids who got arrested for dancing in the subway up in Washington Heights. So Take One told Henry that he knew Frosty Freeze and myself. Frosty Freeze and myself went down to Henry's studio in Soho, and we did a demo for him. And he then told us, "Hey, we're doing this event at this place called Common Grounds, and we'd like to have you part of it. It's called Graffiti Rock." And it was the first time that there was a presentation of breaking, graffiti, DJing, MCing as a happening. Like, this is what's happening uptown.
Okay.
That's what led to the whole downtown explosion of hip hop.
Okay. Do all of those go together in your mind? I mean, is there no
I think there's a genesis that occurred. I think it was very natural because back then there was no you didn't have to be like, there was no requirement for like hip hop or anything like that. It's just like these are some of the things that we did in the hood. And there just happened to be people who did multiple things, A lot of times it was like you were trying to DJ, you were trying to b-boy, you were trying to write, whatever, and trying to find out what you were good at, or doing it and just looking horrible at it and thinking you were good.
Right. What about the music at this point? Because the name, well, you got to break down the name for me as far as b-boying and breaking, but the music was a big component?
Music is key because we were dancing to the music that came out of our parents' civil rights movement. We were dancing to music that represented expression, going against the grain, funk, soul, personality, character. So that's why there is so much character in the original B-Boys and B-Girls. Because we danced to music that really meant something. It represented a movement, and we came out of that. So, and because there were so few moves back then, you had to have some character and style because there weren't enough moves to kind of like create the visual dynamics that can, I guess, make someone believe that you're better than you are. Okay. In terms of response to rhythm. You could do a very acrobatic move, and because the move comes from the dance, people will think you're still dancing even if you're not rhythmic, even if you're not really in sync with the music.
Okay, all right.
So.
And getting that music to where the break beats would continue to play and continue to play, that was, I guess, the DJ's job, right?
Yeah, that was the DJ's job. We were all fans of DJs, and we were always trying to get those tapes that were recorded from live jams, because if you had a tape, and let's say you have a Cold Crush Brothers tape, one side of the tape might be the Cold Crush Brothers performing, but the other side of the tape might be Charlie Chase and Tony Tone spinning music for the crowd before the performance. So you had your music to practice to dance to, and then you had your music to sing along to, because the Cold Crush Brothers were gonna be doing their show. So that's how we became more aware of the music. And then we would also, as little kids, try to look at what the DJ was playing, try to see the names of the songs, and let's say a song, Mardi Gras by Bob James. That would be called, no, I'm sorry. How about Last Night, or Last Night Changed It All, something like that. I had like a telephone ring on it.
Okay.
Last night changed it all. I really had a ball, but it had a phone ringing thing, almost as if someone's, answering the phone to talk to one of her girls, and we would just call that the telephone jam. Not knowing that it was called Last Night, and that's how we try to figure out songs.
Okay.
And that had a breakbeat on it.
Right. Would you practice to music, or was that just a luxury you couldn't afford?
No, yeah, that was hard to afford, because that meant that you had to have a
movable
a
tape.
box.
Right.
We didn't call it ghetto blasters or boom boxes. We just called it a box, a radio. That was difficult. Okay. So.
Tell me about the cultures, because I think in the Fresher Kids it talks about, you come from a Puerto Rican family, and you had the black guys, maybe a few white boys coming in here, and they all brought, like you said, a different kind of history of dance and the family, maybe music. How did that all mix together, and did each kind of culture contribute something?
I think, in New York, there was a huge intermingling between the African American community and Latino community. It was very rare when you had, let's say, someone who was Irish or someone who was Italian that was a b-boy, because crossing into those areas meant a lot of danger. You already had enough danger in your own community, but going into one of those areas, you're guaranteed to be chased out or something like that. So if you were fortunate enough to live in a community where I lived in, you had an intersection of Black, Latino, and Italian in the Bronx. And this is before I lived in Manhattan. And that there was a tavern called Lino's Tavern. It was a family who migrated from Italy over to the Bronx, and one of my best friends, Steven, also that was his family. So the community would gather there to watch sports, to mingle with each other, and you had a couple of wise guys in there, you knew that, and you had different kinds of people mingling in there, and that was a beautiful thing. So it was more likely that you might be able to either influence someone to dance like you, or you'd be inspired to understand what they're about. Not by design or anything like that, just what happen. For me, that was my personal experience, because Africa Islam was actually one of the first. Africa Islam and my brother Robert Colon were the first b-boys I ever saw. And I thought it was just embarrassing what they were doing, throwing themselves on the floor. This is before I knew anything about a jam. But we were all in that area. And I think Lino's Tavern was a true breeding ground for multicultural understanding. But then you have someone like Mr. Freeze, who's French. His parents were in concentration camps. They came over from France whenever they came over. And then you have Mr. Freeze, this French kid who now lives in the Bronx, and then he became a b-boy, which was very, very rare and odd, because when you do look at everyone who was a b-boy back then, it was very, you didn't really find anyone who was Caucasian as a b-boy.
Right. And what is a b-boy?
B-boy originally was a Bronx boy, and then it turned into, I guess it took on more meaning, Bronx boy, break boy, or Bronx girl, break girl, and that was it. That's what it was. A lot of people thought that b-boy meant a person that is within hip-hop, and it's a general term for anyone that likes hip-hop. But b-boying represented what we did on the floor, the dancers.
And what about the attitude that comes with it, the persona and everything? I mean, we took some pictures here earlier, and we're crossing our arms in certain ways. I mean, it has a heavy culture in it.
Yeah, I think the attitude just comes from, I guess, it evolves out of your surroundings and everything that you're living. And there were no theatrics about the character. It was very real. If you were acting in an aggressive manner, it's probably because you were an aggressive person, or you became that, or you were a defensive person because you knew you had to defend yourself if something jumped off. And, it wasn't part of the dance. It's who we were. And it just happened to come across in a dance because that's how we lived. So I try to tell people, look, if that is not who you are, the beauty of this dance is that you're allowed to be who you are, and you're allowed to create and think outside the box, but also, respect the essence of the dance while creating. But the theatrics of acting like you're ghetto or acting like you're a gangster, to me, it's just like, come on, man.
Okay.
There was no acting like anything, unless you're coming from a situation where you're happy or you're smiling and you're goofing around because it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get the attention of this girl, or yeah, I'm gonna show this girl that I'm the hard dude. What? Let her know who's around so she can check me out. We did things like that, or it really depended on the moment, but it wasn't really anything fake. If you are a funny person naturally, like there's this guy, Easy Mike, who was in Rocksteady. He was dope b-boy, but he was more on the funny side. He was always cracking jokes and goofing around, and that also showed in his dancing. But he was also a serious b-boy as well. He's a serious, funny b-boy.
Right. Very nuanced.
Yeah.
Right, but you got to be yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
And
but you also have to respond to the music soulfully. Right.
And respond to your opponent in the battle. Why a battle?
I think we it's weird because why a duel? You're testing your ability. You're practicing all week. And when you have nothing but the props you get, the respect you get for showing up and doing the best you can and coming up with something new every week, that's a beautiful thing because you're going back home to nothing anyway. So it's some instant gratification based on a lot of hard work. And sometimes it's as simple as we just wanted to meet girls and we just wanted to get respect from other people. Right. Because there was really nothing else. There were no opportunities for shows, no music videos, no movies, nothing like that existed. So it was just really about being the best. Right. Like a boxer wants to be the best in the world, Yeah. And the beauty of what we did back then was, in order to protect your reputation, you actually had to put it on the line. And win or lose didn't matter. You just couldn't be a punk.
So if there's a jam, you got to go in that circle.
Yeah, you're going to battle. You got to go.
Right.
Otherwise, I don't know, you're just part of the crowd.
How many times you battling a week back then?
Not many. You practice all week and wait for the weekend. You would do things like, let's say when I was a kid, I would hear about someone, and if I heard you lived like 20 blocks away, meanwhile, 20 blocks I shouldn't be going because I'm so young, but I was so hungry to dance, and I don't know if I wanted to be the best, but I just wanted to battle. And I would go to your neighborhood, don't know what you look like, I know your name, and I kind of know where you hang around, and I'd find you and say, yo, you B-Boy Brian? Oh yeah, you break? Yeah, you want to battle? And we go on the concrete, or we find somewhere to dance, and that's it. And that's how you gained your reputation. You would track people down. Or you would go to a jam because you would hear, like, yo, I heard this crew, Zulu Kings is gonna be there, or I heard the Bronx Boys are gonna be there, whatever. And you knew that you wanted to go there and battle.
How could you spot a B-boy?
A lot of times, the hat was to the side.
Why is that?
The hat was to the side. I don't know. It started before I started dancing, but I was emulating B-Boy Spy. When I first started dancing, he was just like one of the most notable B-Boys and one of the superhero B-Boys. And I wanted to be like Spy. But a lot of times, a lot of B-Boys were wearing their hats like that. That was a style. And sometimes that was the giveaway, but then there was also, let's say, a person who was kind of like a pretty boy dude. Then next thing you know, he's on the floor. It's like, oh shit, this guy's dope. You never expected him to be one of those dudes. So, you know, I was a little kid just figuring all of this out. I'm 10 years old, I'm like, wow, I'm just blown away. Everything is, in my mind, embellished to be more than what it actually was. So I think there are other people you'd have to interview to find out why that started.
Okay. So we're now getting into the early 80s, and now you're probably seeing that I can get paid for this, and that's probably changing things. You know,
we got paid, our first gig, I made like maybe $15. That was the gig we did with Henry Chalfant at the Kitchen Center for Performing Arts. And again, man, we were making money, and for us, the money we made, we treated as short money. It's not like we were looking at investments. I was probably the only guy in Rocksteady to get put my money into a CD fund or anything like that. But we didn't have any real money management skills. We were just spending it as soon as we got it. And sometimes there were people in Rocksteady who would spend it before they even got home from tour. And that was just talking to their girlfriends on the phone. So there were things like that. But I never really thought of it as us becoming rich or anything like that. Because we didn't think it was possible. I don't think we thought it was possible. You know, and we were too short-sighted to realize anything beyond the moment.
Okay. What about crime? Is it getting to a point where you're like, crime's still a possibility? It's still
something? Crime was always a possibility and always happening. There was no difference back then between us going to do a show in Soho and us being hungry after practice a few days later and needing to go rob someone or go snatch a purse or maybe winter's coming, we need a coat. Let's go catch someone on West End Avenue because there's money over there on West End Avenue in Manhattan, and more than likely some person would be wearing like a goose down jacket that'll keep you warm.
Right. So that's always part of the life.
Back then it was, not now.
Right, okay.
Obviously.
Right, all right.
So yeah, we were still in survival mode because it's not like we were millionaires or anything like that. And even when had the record deal with Virgin and Charisma, we were completely robbed on that one.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, and I'll see you on the inside.
I'm also a stick-up kid, and I do fucked up shit, but I'm going to get into this dance.